It's welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to be an alchemist of the soul? We got a show for you. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. It's an amazing book. You can find it on Amazon. And join us on YouTube or Facebook, A Tribe of Giants. On YouTube, it's Wake Up with Giants TV. Hit the subscribe button so you know when we go live every single dang time. And the only thing I've ever alchemized, I think, what I alchemized this morning was a little bit of string cheese, a little bit of Tillamook cheddar, and black cherry monster. So
That's
we're gonna
quite
find out this
creative.
morning how to alchemize better things than that in your life, I'm sure, because
Well,
Kellan is amazing. So Nick, will
Kellan
you
is amazing.
introduce our guest and any other announcements that I forgot about?
I will absolutely. Well, one announcement is the SG group, SG6, so the sixth cohort. I'm going to speak over my tongue here
Yeah,
eventually.
it'll be fine.
Starts in August 31st. And so we run a group of 10 people for 8 weeks on the SG12 Journey program. It's amazing. A lot of incredible results coming from that. So if you want information, let us know and we'll get that over to you by messenger. That's probably the best way to do that. And I'm going to dive in. Kellan, you look phenomenal. You got a tie on.
Phenomenal.
I have a tie. I could go put it on.
Well, it's okay. I'm going to go to church after we're done.
Oh.
So that's why I have a tie on. I didn't do it for you. Otherwise, I would have showed up in another.
Gosh dang it. I was feeling special.
Okay. I did it just for you. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there you go.
Well, let me introduce you. Kellan has lived multiple lives and careers in this life. That's the beauty of him. He's had a 30-year career in energy, including C-suite positions in the U.S. and Canada. And this led him to testify before the U.S. Congress and have a contract with the Queen of England. I've never had that. So that's a big
Not
deal. Yet. He has a 15-year career as a life and business coach and is known as the Alchemist of the Soul. He battled depression for 35 years. I can relate to that. Before discovering complete liberation in 2007. He's the author of 18 books and counting. He speaks regularly at summits and on stages around the world. He'll be joining us at the event in September in Florida, the Upgrade Your Life Tour. He shares frameworks and tools to help clients melt barriers, move mountains, and mobilize superpowers to get what they most desire. He performed in a group that had 3 albums chart #1 on the Billboard charts. He still writes, records, and performs songs that are part of his commitment to help 10 million people discover, develop, and serve with their divine gifts. And most of all, Kellan is a lover of people. I've experienced that. He calls coaching the people encouragement business and the dream delivery laboratory. That's a beautiful intro. Thanks for being on the show with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here and grateful to get a chance to love your audience and to see what we can do to create cool stuff.
Well, you're going to be able to add 7 to 10 more people to that 10 million after this show, so don't worry.
I'm excited. Let's do it.
The most highly engaged 7 to 10 people you'll ever meet. So, the beauty of the 12 journeys, that's what we like to kind of dive through, is your process of going through your own journeys and creating who you are today. And at some point, I'm sure there was a period of your life where you felt maybe life was happening to you, that you didn't really have a say. Is that accurate?
So you read the bio, and the 30 years that I spent in a career, I was raised in what from the outside looked like a typical home, 2 parents and stuff, but there was a lot of discipline based around religion that was fanatic, that today would be felony child abuse. And I came out of that circumstance. I left home when I was 17, and from 17 to 52, for that 35 years, I never got any help. I never talked to anyone about what I felt or what was going on in life. I believed 3 things. 1, I wasn't good enough and never would be. Number 2, that somehow all the beatings I got, I deserved, and that my mom was right. And that in order to be okay, I had to prove that to her, because after all, she had God on her side. And then the other thing is that everything I wanted to do was wrong. I had to follow some prescribed path. And that created a conflict in me that I never addressed. So I was blessed with gifts, talents. I got high positions and I knew how to make money. And I was blessed with some smarts. And so I ended up riding a roller coaster of making a lot of money and then sabotaging it, literally self-sabotage, doing things that would destroy both the positions that I had and relationships that I was in. So I did it, and I got married and had some kids, and then I destroyed all that. And then all alcohol, drugs, and everything were part of this whole framework. So I spent that 35 years isolated, never talking to anyone, struggling with I'm not good enough, never will be, trying to prove to myself, my mom, that framework that I was okay. So I went up and down that roller coaster a number of times until I was 52. So the list of accomplishments and all the money and positions I made and had were true, but they were in a container of absolute misery.
What shifted that? Was there an awakening? Was there a recognition? Was there a bottom point? Like, what woke you up to, I can do something about that?
So I was so steeped in this thing and so wrapped in my own life that in 2007 in August, exactly 15 years ago this month on a Friday night, I think it was a little later in the month, so we're not quite at 15 years, but almost. I came home on Friday night. I was back up at the very pinnacle of one of those things. I was making so much money that my $3,000 a week cocaine habit didn't matter. I was single for the third time, divorced again. I had 4 of my 10 children living with me. They were all teenagers, and I was isolated. I remember saying to myself all the time, I don't know who I am. Give me a script, tell me what to do. I can be anybody you like, put on the 3-piece Armani and go do battle. But I was a miserable wreck. I came home from work on a Friday night and was going to go out and party for the weekend. It would have been Monday or Tuesday before I came back. But before I left, I felt like I needed to turn on the television. Now, that doesn't sound like anything except I didn't watch TV. I picked up the remote and looked at it and went, I don't know how to do this. So I had to ask one of the kids. My 16-year-old daughter punched some buttons and, threw the remote at me and left the room. And it landed on a television program called Intervention, which I'd never heard of because I didn't watch TV. But Intervention is a reality TV show about families who stage interventions for busted loved ones. And the protagonist, I watched about 10 minutes, and the protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched my life on TV for about 10 minutes and I said, screw this, I'm not watching it. And I turned it off and walked away. And I walked around the house for a few more minutes, did some dishes, did a couple things, and I got ready to go out. And I was absolutely compelled to turn the TV back on, this time I knew how. So I turned it back on and that program started over. No, I don't have a DVR. No, I don't. It wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that, but it did. So it started over and I thought, oh, crap. Okay, so I watched it and it went badly. The guy yelled at his family, stomped out, said he had no problem and all that. But I watched the whole thing and it freaked me out. It freaked me out bad enough that I didn't go out to party. I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere. I felt out of body. I was in a dark, large room that felt like a theater. I could hear voices and there was a parade of things on the stage, not fast, but very slowly. And it was all focused on suffering. And it was my life, all the suffering that had been inflicted on me as a kid, up through all the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as a liar, a cheat, a drug addict, and all the things that I had become. And I don't have language to describe the intensity of the experience. After a long time, a voice simply said, "It is enough." I woke up and the sun was shining in the window, which was weird because the windows faced west. I got up and realized it was 5:00 Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for nearly 18 hours. I got up and had no idea what to do. I knew that I'd been invited to change. And I had no idea where to go, who to talk to, where to start or anything. but I knew I wasn't going to do that. So I threw away $1,000 worth of stuff that I had laying around, because I always did. And I quit. Cold turkey, $3,000 a week to zero in one day. That was it. That was the first piece, because it got me sober, but it didn't do anything at all to address how I got there, which was never talking to anyone, completely closed up and isolated and believing I was worthless.
Yeah.
But I went, so the second half of this change happened 2 weeks later. I went back to work because I didn't know what else to do, but I knew I had to get away from all of it, get away from the career, the whole thing. And I was in the position I had, I used to get a lot of free stuff because I made decisions that affected a lot of companies. I used to get free tickets to this and that, free box seats, and a lot of expensive bottles of booze, like I needed that. But anyway, one of the things I got was a pair of tickets to see a Yo-Yo Ma concert. Now, if you know Yo-Yo Ma, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. Yo-Yo Ma's in the classical world, he's a cellist. It's So
I was thinking Yoko Ono.
No, Yo-Yo Ma.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a cellist, and he's spectacular. By himself, alone, down there on the stage, he captivated the entire auditorium. It was incredible. But anyway, so I thought, well, it'd be a shame to waste this other ticket because, like, yeah, I'm single and I don't have anybody to take. And I was not interested in anything. So I thought, but I asked in the groups that I managed, who likes classical music? And some lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I said, okay, fine. Have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. Here, see you there. So I gave her the ticket. We met at the venue and the concert was spectacular. And halfway through, and you got to remember now, I am 2 weeks now, stone cold sober. Okay. And halfway through, this feeling came over me that I recognized from 2 weeks before. And this voice said in my head, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're insane. I said, not only have I screwed that up 3 times officially with some other messes in between, I don't even know her. I don't know if she has a boyfriend. I mean, like, I don't know. And so I didn't think any more about it. And then later that night, we were backstage because in addition to great tickets, they were also backstage passes. So we're backstage meeting everybody and reception and all that stuff. And the voice came back and said, and you need to tell her tonight.
I like how polite it was.
And you need to tell her tonight. And I went absolutely nuts. I thought, this is insane. She can have me arrested for harassment. She works in one of my groups. I don't know if she has a boyfriend. No. But you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it was awkward. And it went about like you would have expected. Are you out of your mind? But she didn't call the police or have me arrested, which was joyful.
It's a good start.
Yeah, it was a good
few of those experiences.
Yeah, okay. And so, and here's what happened. Within 2 weeks, she had her own set of experiences. She resigned her position. I walked away from millions of dollars in contracts. And in just a few months, we'll celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And the best part is her name is Joy. Like, you can't make this stuff up. She was literally the angel that was sent to help me learn how to be a person. She was invincible in her support. I've asked her 1,000 times, what on earth made you walk off, quit your job, your career, and walk off into the sunset with a drug addict? And she said, I just knew. I mean, nobody knew, but everybody knew,
Yeah.
She said, I just knew to the core of my soul it was the right thing to do. And she found me counselors to talk to. She taught me how to be a person. She taught me how to tell the truth to myself and to others, which I'd never done in my life. And is now not only my life, but business partner. And so that was the turning point. And it didn't do anything. What I know from this is everything connecting the divine and this world is always issued as an invitation, right? Nobody made me do anything. The likelihood would have been I would have said this is ridiculous and got high the next morning 2 weeks before. But I didn't. I said yes. I accepted the invitation, which I'm sure I'd had 1,000 other times, but this one was pretty loud. So I said, okay, I don't have any idea where we're going or how to do this or where this road goes, but I'm done with that one.
Yeah. I want to tie in the journeys that you went through. I see this in there. So you went through the journey of waking up, which is in a weird way, right? There's no DVR, the show comes on, it starts over. You end up watching the whole thing, drop everything cold turkey, dream yourself in hell. Like you have this awakening that says, my life's got to be different from this. There's a journey that we go through, a lot of people go through, of grief, and then they go into the journey of acceptance, and then from there learn to empower themselves so that they can start visioning their lives. But the journey of grief often comes in the form of just this loss of the life that could have been, 52 years old and waking up from depression, um, dropping cold turkey, like all these things. Did you experience a grief in your life? Was there shame? Was there judgment of yourself that you went through as you started to heal?
Massive judgment. I mean, she was sent. So here's the situation. I was sober. I had a divine companion, and she went in straight in, all in, just insane. But I didn't have anything changed other than I was sober and I knew I had to do something. So I was frightened. I was still convinced that I was bad and that everything was my fault. And I had to unpack that. So for the next 4 years or 5, from 2007 to 12, she and I got to know each other, which was new. She and I worked together. I didn't even talk about depression before that. Like the context of depression was something I discovered in those 5 years as I began to talk to people. And I talked to different counselors. I talked to one for a while. And to start with, I couldn't even tell them the truth. I thought I had to go in sessions and not only tell them what was wrong, but have the answers. I didn't know how to be vulnerable and just talk to them and say, help me here. Help me put this together. I couldn't even do that for the first couple of years at all. And so it was just this process of finally admitting that I was broken, and broken not in the way of I suck, but that my whole outlook on life was, I was already supposed to do this, it's all my fault, was not true. It's okay to be human. The fact that I'm 52 doesn't matter. I'm just starting now. In fact, recently I had my 66th birthday, or almost a year ago. And I keep saying recently, but I'll be 67 in December. 66 and a half, 67.
That's anyway, so far ahead in the future for me. I'm like,
December. Yeah. That's day after tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
All right. On my 66th birthday, I had this feeling, and I get these all the time now, that I'm at the top of the mountain. I'm halfway done, which means I'm going to live vibrant and healthy till I'm 132. And so the fact that this started when I was 52, that's okay. I'm all in, all good. But those first years were literally grappling with change. Like who do I need to change into? Like I know how to be anybody. I was a master at being anything I needed to be.
Surface wise, right? You could be anybody.
I could do a great job, etc. But me, I had no idea who I was.
You're not that, right? Like you can pretend to be that, but that is not who you are. Is that correct?
Completely correct. I would get home from some of those things and I would say, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. I know how to do all that stuff. World-class Oscar-winning performances, but I don't know who I am.
Right. Wow.
And that was a learning, and the grieving was intense and it was real. And it was the allowing, it was grieving and celebration at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah.
I had to intentionally, I wrote this letter saying all the things I had to say to my mother, and some of it wasn't very nice. But she taught me to do a lot of things. She made me love music, and she taught me piano, which I play professionally and do all kinds of stuff. But this other stuff was brutal. So I wrote all this stuff up and screamed it at the sky and burned it. I mean, there were ceremonial cleansings and all kinds of stuff I did during those years to go through that process. And, leaving home at 17, 52, 35 years of that, the fact that it only took me 5 years to sort it out is pretty good.
Yeah, can we highlight this? I want to highlight this. This is beautiful because that part of the grieving is that releasing, right? All that stuff that happened, the traumas, the turning of the wounds, the unhealing, right? Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate says that trauma continues because people haven't been able to heal it or grieve it properly. And so to go through that grieving process and release it by burning that note and screaming at the sky and really just getting it out, right? Puts you into a position where now your life is what it is at that point. And not only is it what it is, but there's an acceptance of what it is and a gratitude for what is and a gratitude for where you are and what can come from that. And then you move into learning the skills and the tools to get your power, which you didn't have. Like you're mentioning, I didn't know how to do this stuff. I didn't even know this was a possibility. So you had to learn these tools and these skills to be able to empower yourself, because before you were superficially powerful. You were a facade of power. But now you're learning to really empower yourself from the inside out. Can you speak to, I put a lot there, but can you kind of unpack gratitude, acceptance, and empowerment?
Yeah, I hear you walking through the 5 stages of grief, and that's great. One of the things I learned is that I have control of the levers of my life. See, I didn't know that. I believed that it was determined I'm supposed to do this, and if I don't, I suck. And so learning that my life is mine was an enormous revelation. This is mine. And if I don't like where I am, that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means this is where I am, and I've decided I don't like this, and I want to do something else. Because if it's always bad and I have to get better, then you continuously live in the land of suck. I have to suck. I have to be bad now and get better. And then I have to make where better is bad so I can get better than that. And then I have to make that better bad so I can get better than that. And constantly moving from bad to good. Oh, now I'm bad again. Bad to good is not effective. It's not helpful. And most of all, it's not true. Where you are right now
right?
is perfect. You're perfect. And you can make a choice at this moment. You want to be somewhere else. That doesn't mean where you are sucks. We were given gifts and talents, and there's a whole story about that I'll tell later. We were gifts and talents when we came to this world, and I'm not saying that from, oh, that's a nice platitude. There's an experience about that. But what we make out of ourselves is all that we're going to take back when we go home. That's it. You were given gifts and talents, and you're going to do whatever you choose to do with it. And whatever you make out of yourselves is what you're going to get back.
I have a question here. So when you start empowering yourself and you learn this is my life, it's mine to do what I want with, I'm pulling the levers. There was a sense of uncertainty that comes up. Well, now what? Before, if you were coming from the space of drug addict, worthless, depressed, and you looked at uncertainty, I would imagine that you would likely go back to the drugs and the alcohol and the other things to kind of numb out from the uncertainty because it was so uncertain and so unknown. And the possibilities that you could predict from that space would be pretty heavy. But you move into this power and then you look at uncertainty. What happens to you?
When I was in the old me, and there literally is a radical shift, it goes 2 weeks into August. When I look at the old me, I was furiously in control of a mirage. So what I mean by that is, there was some uncertainty, but I did everything I needed to do to furiously take control. And I was doing the Coveyism of climbing the wrong wall, because the thing I believed with all my heart I needed to do was prove that I was okay according to some externality. And there were times of uncertainty, but the thing that drove me to drugs was the feeling back is that I would never be good enough. I'm not good enough. There's this thing out there that I should be doing. I can never do that. I can't stand the pain of knowing that I'm never going to be good enough. I'm not okay no matter what I do. I'm a reject. I can't do it. I don't care how many people pay me, however much money they pay me. Here's this phrase, if they only knew, if they really knew what I really owe, then then they'd hate me, then whatever. So that meant the accolades and the money were phony because they were given to a person who didn't exist.
Yeah, man, the idea of controlling it, that's where the anxieties come in, because now you're worried about what others think and their perception of you, and it's everything. And so your discord and your upset comes from not knowing if you measure up. And if they only knew what was going on behind the scenes and who I was, and if they ever found that out, they would be gone. And the truth is they would, because it's such a facade and you're controlling it. But then when you move into this news space, right, the uncertainty that comes from that is you're not only uncertain in your future, you're uncertain in the person that can create that. You're not able to do that. You can put on a show for a minute, but once they find out, the show is over, right?
How tiring to keep that,
Man.
that up. Like, that's a lot of plates in the air, like a lot of spitting balls, whatever you want to call it.
You hit on something really interesting there, because I have been blessed with a lot of gifts that I now use in my coaching practice to write books and to help people discover their gifts and talents. But I have a lot of gifts and intellect and capability, and I was using them all to do just exactly what you said, to keep all of those plates and things spinning. And like, I never got caught. I could remember all the stories that I told. I didn't realize what a misused gift that was.
Yeah.
Because I have that capability. And I used it to keep out of trouble and to keep the facade alive. And I believe I know with all my heart, that's why the divine and the intervention, it was so loud, because I did all this, and it was literally madness on a grand scale.
And I would imagine the emotions coming off of that, the need and the want to numb those out because they're so intense, right? We go to the hospital and we have pain and we have medication to soften that pain. And people often lean to drugs or sex or alcohol or whatever to numb that pain because it is so intense, right? But never really dealing with the issue.
People used to ask me what my drug of choice was, and the answer is whatever's handy. The real addiction I had was to self-loathing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I needed to hate myself.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I needed the concoctions I created, cocaine, ketamine, ecstasy, all stirred up, and yeah.
The Hugh hit on something earlier about certainty. The certainty that we create in the world isn't out here. It's in us. We become certain in here, and then we can go into any situation, any environment, start creating in that environment, because there are no absolutes in the universe. According to mathematics, there just are not. All things are possible. But when we're certain in here, and you know who you are in here, then that creates out here. Is that accurate for you, or do you have a different version of that?
So absolutely. I created all the facade and the capabilities and the money and the positions and everything I had. And the struggle was I didn't trust it or believe it, and I hated myself, so I kept wrecking it. And then I would create it again because I had that certainty in my ability to create, but the facades were still facades.
Right.
And now, after that, in the work that I've done the last 15 years, the first 5 on myself and 10 now, more, 12, I guess, kind of a fuzzy boundary.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that. 5 on myself and the rest with, beautiful. I now have absolute certainty. And I know that sounds weird, but I say it, and I say it and I mean it. Yeah.
And the absolute certainty comes from now knowing who I am and being comfortable with who I am.
Yeah.
and being joyful about who I am and intending with who I am to do only one thing. And the only thing I do, first breath to last, morning to night, every single day. People ask me, well, what do you do for vacation? I don't vacation. I don't do anything. I am who I am. And I am on this mission to help 10 million people discover, develop, and serve their divine gifts. That's it. That's all I do every day. First breath to last, morning to night.
Yep. Beautiful. The word intention, intendere, to stretch towards something, right? Every day, that stretching towards comes from who you're being. And that absolute certainty is in you now, not in your ability to create a facade, but your ability to impact 10 million lives globally and show them the same thing. Now you look at your vision. So if we move from here and you look around you at the abundance that's around you, that's all the material that you have to draw from to create this 10 million person impact. It's already there. But before, you probably couldn't see that. There were maybe limited resources, a lot of competition, a lot of control. Now it's like, nope, I know that everything I need is there. And I got the vision of 10 million. Tell me about vision in your words. Like, how do you vision? How do you recognize abundance? How do you move through uncertainty into possibility? I'm setting you up and I'm priming you in a little bit, but how do you move through those areas?
So I don't have any uncertainty, and I have no internal conflict. I am that I have no internal conflict any longer. What happened in the years is when I first thought about building a coaching practice, for example, and wanting to serve with the things that I'd learned, I sucked at it. I sucked at it because I made it about me and will people like me still, that were leftover entrails of the previous need to be liked and the previous need to be okay. And they won't pay me unless they like me or anything. And now the evolution and growth continues and will forever. But the absolute certainty doesn't come from saying I'm done. It comes from being absolutely certain about the path. And so today, I don't worry at all any day about where this road goes. If I wake up and the house burns down, we're taking care of my 91-year-old mother-in-law. And we have a Ukrainian family who lives with us because of the war, because Joy, my wife's Ukrainian, and her dad was born in Odessa. And so that's all front and center for us. And I don't care what falls apart. 4 years ago, I died. 4 years ago, last June, I died. 11 years after that first thing. And we can talk about that in a minute. But and so I know. And the absolute certainty comes not from knowing that everything's going to go my way, because I'm certain it won't. But I don't care. It's going to go wherever it goes. But I know what I'm doing. I know who I am and what I'm doing every day. And I'm committed every day to acknowledge and serve every person I meet, to love just because I can. And then I define love, because people take that as squishy. To love someone is just to use your resources intentionally to serve them and lift them and bless them in their highest interest. And I define it even a little more: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental resources. If I choose to use my resources and bless somebody in their highest and best interest, then I love them. And the more I do that, the more I love them. And so I love my clients, and I love you guys for the good you're doing. And every single person I touch, I can look them right in the eye and mean it with all my heart that I love them for every good thing they're trying to do and for who they are here, right now. Why? Because they don't need to be anywhere else unless they want to be. And if they want to go somewhere else, then they can. And if they want help, then, and they're looking for somebody to help them, then I can do that if you want. And so
it takes away the need. It takes away the need too, to find that validation or anything like that.
I love what you said earlier, because I have a name for that, and it kills more people than COVID, and it's the Witot fungus. WITOT, Witot fungus. It kills more people than COVID, and it stands for what I think others think.
Kellan, you talked about having an influence on 10 million people. I would bet pretty much everything that I have that you're already doing that and I've already done that because of the ripple effect. Because what happens right here in this group multiplies as it goes out. That impact continues because things that you say to me today shift my perspective. It shifts my life, and I think that number needs to be a lot higher because I think you've already done that, my friend. Like I talk to hundreds and hundreds of people, um, weekly, monthly, and those 100 people are then influenced because of my way of being, which you've influenced, by the way. And then that continues to spread out and go and go and go and go and go. So the work you're doing is phenomenal, and I know that you're hitting that. You're nailing it, my friend. So I just wanted to
Thank you
let you
for
know that.
saying that. You put up How to Be the Alchemist of the Soul. So I'm going to read something to you that I
Yeah.
have.
Beautiful.
And this is a piece of, we're in the I am sort of universe, the ultimate being everything. I was working on a statement for myself in those years, right? And in the process of figuring out how to do this 10 million more directly, because I agree with you, I probably have. In fact, I'm certain that I have. And thank you for saying that. I acknowledged with deep gratitude for you saying that because it means a lot to me. I wrote something called The Scroll of Truth and Power. And it's separate from my I am statements who describe what I am. But I wrote it. It's funny because I wrote it like a scroll, right? Like somebody reading a big scroll. And so I wrote it in this fancy font in medieval type language and all this stuff because it represents something. And that's where the phrase alchemist of the soul comes from. And here's what it says. The scroll of, I won't read you the whole thing because it's 2 pages, but I'll just read you the first part. The scroll of truth and power, stave the first, guided and nurtured by God through the valley of death and refined in the fires of abuse, addiction, depression, and self-loathing, I am become the alchemist of the soul. And then it goes on and talks about who I work with and how we work together and some other stuff. But that's where that phrase came from.
That I am become, such a strange way to say it, right? The word becoming is to bring forth. I am that you brought forth. Become means that you brought that forth. Like I am that I brought forth the alchemist of the soul. I mean, the way of speaking it, and I hear you in your words. You and I had an opportunity to have a conversation, and you're very conscious of the words that you use and how you use them, the inflections of those, the inflections, maybe I'm saying that wrong even, but the becoming, right? Like we are bringing forth this version of us, the alchemy, the blending of all, like I think of alchemy as the blending of things, the blending of your old life that led you to the path to meet joy, the alchemy of that, the alchemy of 10 million people and who you're becoming as you create that. Like there's alchemy, there's a blending of the worlds. Does that make sense?
It does. And I am become is an old phrase. And I looked it up very carefully because when Oppenheimer created the atomic bomb, he said, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. And that is an intentional, and I am or anything else is a weaker linguistic expression.
Okay.
I am become sits at the very top of the pyramid.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit? I'd love to hear more on that.
Okay. If you say, I am this, or I did that, or I became that, all of those mean the same thing in contextually. But if you look, I am become up. I don't have it in front of me, but I did it. That arose organically in me as I wrote this. I knew the right thing was I am become. And then I thought that sounds weird. And I looked it up and I was rewarded in the research because it is the most definitive, most powerful statement of that can be articulated in English.
Man, yeah, that's powerful. I think maybe this is the first time I've heard that phrased that way, that it's the pinnacle of being, right? It's even beyond being. It's beyond the I am. It's beyond that.
Look it up. You
will.
can do the research and see,
Well,
but
now
that's
I'm
what
curious.
I found. I am become the alchemist of the soul. And the piece I also want to share with you.
Yeah.
Alchemy is that mystical science, and the old thought was to turn lead into gold, and they use the word transmute.
Yep.
And so the next little piece says, I create the space and guide you to create the elixir to transmute the fury of injustice, the ravages of adversity, and the pain of loneliness into the pure gold of love, forgiveness, and service.
Huh.
And so that's the next little phrase.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So that's why I call it The Alchemist. It arose as in the state. I was in state and just wrote this stuff.
That's beautiful. I think, if you're watching this, because I know I'm speaking to the person on the other side of this screen, that if you haven't had a conversation with Kellan, or you didn't even know anything about Kellan, this isn't what we're doing here isn't any different from what you would experience talking to Kellan one-on-one. And I would invite you to do that, like to just have that dialogue with him, because I can see in your eyes when Ryan's speaking, when I'm speaking to you, I see in your eyes the depth and sincerity of what you're saying here. Like it comes from you. So there is no facade anymore. Like I don't feel like there's this person behind that's pretending to be something they're not.
No, and that is the glory, and that's why I say I just do one thing. Sometimes I yell and say loud things, and sometimes it's very quiet.
Yeah.
But everything is totally and absolutely transparent and authentic. In great fear, I wrote the book Tightrope of Depression, where I discussed openly, finally, all of the things that I had been through. And that's one of the, as you mentioned, zillion books that I've written. I wasn't even an author before this. When I was in the old stuff 30 years in that other career, I didn't start writing until 2009.
Wow.
So the 18 books I've written have been in the last 13 years.
Yeah, that's just an indication that no matter where you are, there's no lost time. The only time we lose time is when we judge it.
Right.
So I wonder, as you look forward, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, and you look at the legacy that you are leaving, not going to leave, that you are currently in the creation of leaving, or are leaving as you go, right? The legacy, the purpose of why are you doing this?
In 2018, I was invited to change. I changed and I didn't know how to do it. And I worked on myself and discovered that I had been struggling with mighty depression, diagnosed by every shrink. And they said I was surprised I was still alive and breathing, et cetera, all kinds of dramatic pronouncements. It came to me as I discovered that I had control and that I was going to be who I wanted to be, that the thing I wanted most of all was to serve and bless those around me with this discovery of the infinite power they have to create whatever they want, not what somebody else says, but what they want to be. Yeah. And that's all they're ever going to create is what they want. So after 11 years of that, in 2018, Joy and I went on a cruise. We'd never been on one before, even though I'd had all that stuff. I'd just never been on a cruise. So we went on one. And at the end of that cruise, I got sick. And it was in the Baltic Sea, and we visited Tallinn, Estonia, and Oslo, and Helsinki, and all those cities, and St. Petersburg, which we'll never go to again, but right, all that stuff. And at the end in Oslo, I got sick, and very, very sick. And then we flew home to Amsterdam, or flew through Amsterdam home, and that was the second day. And on the way home, over the pole flight from Amsterdam, I was really sick. And today, of course, they would throw you out the window of the plane, but then they just brought you ice and took care of you, right? Anyway, so I got home, and that was Tuesday. I got sick Monday, so that was day 2, and the days will matter in a minute. Day 3, 4, Wednesday, Thursday, I kept thinking I would get better and didn't. Day 5, Friday, I finally decided I better go to the clinic, the walk-in clinic, which they have here in Canada, and they wouldn't let me in. They took one look at me and said, "You can't come in here. Go to emergency right now." So we did. And, in ER, it might take, an hour or 2 or 3, depends on how full it is and all that stuff. In 10 minutes, I was in a private room. I didn't know they had private rooms in the ER. The only thing I'd ever seen are those curtains, little curtains separating cots. I was in a private room with the door in 10 minutes, and 10 more minutes, the doctors were all over me. This was not good. So I realized this is serious, and they kept coming back and forth and asked me where I'd been and all this other stuff and x-rays. And then they came back and said, well, you have pneumonia. And then they came back and said, worse than pneumonia. You have some terrifying pneumonia in both lungs, but something's worse. And they came back, said, okay, they finally found a place to put me upstairs. And I told Joy to go home because we have dogs and cats and I was going to be there. So then they came back and said, yeah, we're going to move you to ICU. And then they came back and said, a little while in between each one, we're going to put you in biological isolation. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's double doors, airlock, hazmat suits, biohazard 4, that, right? So they put me there, and then they came back and said, asked the question you never want to hear in a hospital. And they said, do we have permission to intubate you and do anything we need to do to preserve your life? And I said, what? And then I picked up my phone. I said, yes. And I picked up my phone, and I was trembling because I was crashing. Literally, I was dying.
Yeah.
And I went into meditation, which I'd done all my life. And I realized I could feel my body and spirit separating. And it was the weirdest sensation, but I could feel it was like a zipper. I could feel it coming undone. Mm-hmm. So I sent Joy a text, and I could barely operate the phone, but it had 3 lines. ICU. The second line was isolation/intubation. And the third line was I may be dying. And she didn't see it because she was asleep by that time because it was late.
Holy cow.
And a little bit after I sent that, I crashed. And then I died. And she didn't see that. The nurse called her at 2:30 or so in the morning and said, are you coming? And she said, what? And then she saw my text.
Oh, man.
So when I died, I came to in a gray room, and I was horizontal like I was on the stretcher, and I sat up, and I could see the room was gray. Walls were gray, ceiling was gray, everything was kind of gray, and I couldn't see how big it was, sort of fuzzy gray, but I could see over my left shoulder a doorway, and I wanted to be at the door. And so then I was standing at the doorway, and I was leaning on the door jamb on my right shoulder. And on the other side of the door, I noticed that it wasn't a door, it was just a doorway. It was white, gray on my side and white on that side. And there was somebody leaning on the door jamb on that side, opposite me, like that close. And he looked at me and he said, do you want to come home? And in a thousandth of a second, I knew who I was talking to, where I was, what the question meant, and everything. And so we talked about it for a little while, and we talked about what I'd been doing and my coaching practice and who I was trying to help and all the stuff. And finally, I talked to him about everything that Joy and I had done and that we planned to do and all the rest. And I finally realized the answer, and I said, I'm not done. Okay. And then I'm quite sure that's when they were able to restart my heart. Over the next 2 days, I had 2 more conversations. And the second one was quite long. I don't know if we have time to do that or not.
It's up to you.
Okay.
We got whatever time you're willing to take. So,
all right. The next day I was back at the door, and the topic of the first day didn't come up because that had been decided. And we talk as coaches about holding space. I can tell you that in no universe in any place has there ever been space held like there was at that time. We just don't have language. Anyway, so we talked about what I was going to do. All right, you're going to stay. What are you going to do? And so we talked about, so you asked me why, or why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I talked about what I was going to do. And then I had an experience that the best I can give you is, have you ever seen the Jodie Foster movie Contact?
Mm-hmm.
where they build that weird machine and
Yeah.
she takes that. Okay. It was sort of like that. I felt like if I hadn't been in a protective bubble, I would have been incinerated. I had experiences and saw incredible the majesty and beauty and power of so many things, and came back, and that was long, and came back and was able to crystallize 4 really important things to know. Number one is each one of us is an intentional divine creation. There's no accidents. The creator knows who we are, knows our name, knows where we're at, knows what we want, knows everything about all that, and cares. The second thing was that we each truly and actually were given divine gifts. We were, and they're intentional. And the third thing is that we had a mission and purpose that we not only agreed to, but we were stoked about before we came. And the fourth thing is that all the help we need is available from both sides of that door. And so I said, and it was longer than that, but I'm summarizing. I said, so since that's true, why do we settle for crumbs? And I don't know if in the economy of heaven, brevity is a virtue, but the answer was 4 words. Because you don't believe. And I thought, oh, okay. So I asked, well, what can I do about that? How can I help? What can I do about that? Oh, glad you asked. So what came then was an entire framework about how to change beliefs, how to work with things like even these old beliefs that I had from my childhood that I kept for 35 years, like how to do that, not in a white-knuckled fighting way, not in a way that requires us to have this fight, but in an experimental sort of playing way that I wrote a second book. So I wrote a book called Meeting God at the Door, which talks about all this. And then I wrote a second book with it called The Book of Context, which is the guts of this second conversation. I didn't put them in the same book because it was too long. So the third, and that was over. It was a long conversation, or at least that was my perception of time. The third day, we had a conversation. I was back at the door, and this time I was excited. I was just buzzing. I was feeling like I was sitting on one of those bouncy chairs, right? I was buzzing. I was excited, and I was repeating in my mind over and over all the stuff that I'd learned and seen, and we're back there, and he looked at me, and he said, "Are you sure?" And I thought, holy crap, am I sure? What do you mean, am I sure? Did I miss something? Am I biting off more than I chew? Am I stupid? Like, can I do this? What? Am I sure? So we talked about it from all those points of view. And finally I said, yes, I'm sure. And the conversation ended. Nothing was said that said this, but the conversation ended with a finality that I knew we were finished. And then I was in a coma for 14 more days.
Wow.
So I was in a coma for 17 days. When I got up, I had lost 35 pounds and I couldn't walk and couldn't move. And what I had ended up having was a necrotizing MRSA in both lungs and in my bloodstream. And the infectious disease specialist, who was the head of that department at the university, told me what I had. COVID, we talk about 2 or 3% mortality rate. He told me what I had a 10-day kill rate of 100%.
Oh my gosh.
So of course I died. It kills people. That's it. You're done. So it destroyed my lungs, which I'm still working on. And I've learned to walk and all that kind of stuff back again. So why do I do what I do? I do what I do because I said so. Period.
Man. There's more to this, right? There's now a surrendering. How do you do this, right? There's a surrendering to that. Can you share that, like as you think of this and what you committed right there? What do you do when how comes up?
I escorted out of the room. The answer every time I ask those questions is do what's in front of you. Do what's here. And when I settle in, I have a daily creation ritual that has 12 parts to it. It's called Seize the Day, the secret to live in flow and create miracles without limit. I do have a 2.5-hour morning ritual. I never start my day without feeling connected and guided. And I do what's in front of me. And every time I get frustrated or concerned or confused, because we all do, I settle back in, and the answer's always the same. Do what's in front of you.
Is there a part of that that's do it the best you can, or just do it?
Do it the best you can is implied for me, but don't do all that I can do right here, right now. Rest when you need to. This is not about frantic or furious. It's not about proving anything. It's not about witot. It's just about doing what you can, enjoying what you do, be love, like in the most literal sense. And for me, that's easy, because if there was ever a person that was a candidate to be left at the bottom of the canyon, I was it. But the divine is interested in each of our opportunities and possibilities. And here's what I know. God, whatever you want to call it, can do all of his work without us. But he'd rather do it with us. And in the process, make something out of us. Okay. So I'm telling you, these are truths, divine. And so what do? I live in absolute joy. I live in unconditional joy every day, all day long. And I know it sounds and feels like I'm a nutcase, and I don't even care. Like this is who I have committed to be. This is who I am. I love it. I love every minute. I write books. I write music. I sing songs. I coach people. Why? Because I said so. Because I have seen eternity. I want that. And so it's not complicated. And do I get discouraged? And do I get frustrated and sidetracked? Yeah, whatever. That's okay.
There's a lot of trusting that that's enough, and learning that you're enough, that you're worthy, that you matter, that what you're doing, you're right on time, just like you and Nick had said. Nick says it all the time. You're right on time. You're exactly where you need to be, and knowing that, and learning to believe it. I think it's something that for a lot of us, as we've been conditioned and taught that you have to attain it or earn it somehow. But knowing that and finding out who Kellan really is and what he's capable of, and that it's that just trusting the divine and that stepping forward every day is enough. And that it'll work out, and God can come in and pick up the slack, or pick up the pieces, or use what Kellan's been given for the day to be enough.
And God is delighted to do so. Love, remember, is to use intentionally your spiritual, physical, emotional, mental resource to lift and bless someone in their highest and best interest. That's all the divine does. And so that's my goal. I want to be like that. And when you say earn it, I need to remind you, refined, guided and nurtured by God through the valley of death, and refined in the fires of abuse, addiction, depression, and self-loathing, I am become the alchemist of the soul.
I've got one more question I want to ask you. And it's around belief. And there's a scripture that talks about the man that says, "I believe, help my unbelief." And the idea of belief is so subjective and relative, and there may be no short answer, but what is belief according to Kellan?
It's a choice. When we look for something to make us believe, we'll never find it. If we look for some other experience, someone else's experience, some scripture, some person to cause us to believe, it's never going to happen. Belief is something you choose to do. So when people ask me how I can say such things, I said so. I choose to. I believe. Why? Because I believe. It is a choice. I choose to believe.
This is powerful. I'm going to go back and watch this because
there's no other answer. I choose to believe. When
Yeah.
the skies are dark, when everything is black and I don't understand what happened and why, I choose to believe.
Which goes back to
Period.
Steve Hardison's on here, and what goes back to I choose to be. It's a choice.
It is. I choose it. I choose it knowingly, wittingly, intentionally, not blindly, with all my experience and blood on the floor and everything else. After all of that, I would change nothing, and I stand without apology or hesitation. I choose to believe.
This has been an incredible show, Kellan. Is there anything else you want to share today?
Yeah. I love you. I love you for the good you're doing. I'm grateful for your intention, your focus, who you are being in the world. If people want to hear what I do, I have a podcast with nearly 700 episodes called Your Ultimate Life. Listen to that. That's part of my outreach for 10 million. It's on all the regular places. But if I could leave you one thing, and it's this. I don't care where you've been. I don't care who has done what to you or what you have done to someone else. Right here, right now, it is never too late to make a choice to add good to the world. It is never too late to choose to do better, to do more, and to be more. So as long as we allow the baggage of the past, whether it's mistakes we made or things others did to us, to hold power in the present, we are limited. And the answer is forgiveness. Allow it to be gone. And that is also a choice to no longer allow the events of the past have power in the present. So I would leave that with you.
Thank you. I love you too. I don't have
I put mine. I put it on my shirt. So
you took it a step further.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. For those that are watching, Ryan, did you have any additional thoughts?
I blown away the nuggets. I wanted to just, my last thought there was, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, is choosing forgiveness.
Well, that last book I just wrote will be out in a week. It's called Forgiveness, A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And in September, when I talk at that conference, it's going to be about forgiveness.
Perfect, because that's exactly that hit me. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you to our viewers. Again, on this screen here, yourultimatelife.ca. Go check out Kellan, get in touch with him. He will talk to you. I mean, it's amazing. He will, as cool as he is, he will have a conversation with you. So take advantage of that. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for being a part of our journey, the Giants journey, and our impact in the world. And thank you for all you do to support our community. We love you. So
thank you.
Make a giant day. We'll see you in the next video.
I will.
Love you too.